Welcome back to Destination Video Music, August 1st, 1981, the podcast. I go by the name of Ford Lee, and this is episode 5. And today I'm very excited to have Ashley here. Ashley, how are you?
Doing great. How about you?
Very well, thank you. I'm excited for multiple reasons, but there were three things that stood out when we started talking. The first was you saw the launch. The second was you were in a test market town. And then the third thing, which in our messaging you said, and I quote, getting MTV was like getting water in a cultural desert, end quote. So I love that quote, and I love those
Mhm.
three things. So let's get started here. So Ashley, it's 1981. Take me back to that year. How old were you? Where were you living? What was going on in your life at the time?
Okay, well, I was 10 years old and living in a tiny little town in northwestern Ohio called Cridersville. I think there were about 2,000 people, maybe. And It was almost the countryside. And we had pre-MTV, we sort of had the three networks, not great reception, and one PBS channel out of the nearest college town. And so yeah, it was pretty boring. It was a lot of sitcoms and that kind of thing, and there wasn't a ton of stuff to do in my town. It was hanging out with friends at the playground, uh, you know, playing Barbies,
Now,
whatever that. It just
yeah,
wasn't a lot of excitement happening. Yeah.
I guess you could say it was a cultural desert,
It was a
as you
cultural
said.
desert.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
And my parents listened to classic rock and Motown, so that was kind of the pop music I was familiar with, like whenever they might listen to the radio or something.
Now, did you have a musical taste of your own, or were you listening to any of the current music at the time around, 80, 81?
Hmm. Yeah, I think I was very influenced by my parents in terms of what they listened to. So yeah, it was, a lot of Beatles, Rolling Stones, The Who, Led Zeppelin, um, maybe some more like late 70s rock stuff. And then so that was more my dad, and my mom was just super into Motown. So Smokey Robinson, the Supremes, all those people,
That's great. You had a
Temptations,
good
all that
mix.
stuff.
A good mix.
Yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
mean, there was variety for sure. Yeah,
Of
but
course.
no, I hadn't really started like exploring music on my own at all.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So, and had you ever seen a music video before prior
Well,
to MTV?
right. I think that really I had seen Um, like after school, I used to watch reruns of the Monkees, and they always had one or two songs in each episode, and they kind of did little music videos or skits with them. Um, and I'm trying to think, I think there was like Solid Gold, like those music shows or Soul Train.
Sure. Hmm.
So I would have seen those kind of performances, yeah, like on Saturdays.
Right, right. Yeah, so, you were saying that there were what, four, five channels on TV.
Mhm.
The radio, I'm assuming, were you close to a major city in Ohio?
Not really. The closest cities are Dayton and Lima, and they had radio stations, but we could even get uh, some stuff out of Cincinnati. And that's the nice thing about radio is it goes a ways.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, of course. Of course. No,
mhm.
that's good. I'm just wondering because you're in such a small town, so I'm just really curious about what you were exposed to and what you were not
Right.
exposed to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean disco and it was basically disco rock and Motown. I did not I had no idea what new wave was or post punk or punk for that matter. None of that I exposed to before MTV. Yeah. Mm.
Sure. And I mean, I think in some major cities, definitely LA, probably parts of New York City, and I don't know what other major cities, but in another episode earlier, in one of the side episodes, I spoke to Connor, and he, grew up in Orange County, close to LA. So the radio that he was listening to, because there were so many avant-garde DJs playing all this new music, all the new wave
Hmm.
and whatnot, he was fortunate to grow up near such a major city. But this
Hmm.
is one of the things that I think about because, again, if you're from one of those smaller towns, if you're from the Midwest, the South, or anywhere that you don't have that exposure, sure, you don't know New Wave. Meanwhile, people in major cities might have been exposed to New Wave as early as 78, 79, 80,
Exactly.
right? So,
Hmm.
again, I keep bringing up the phrase cultural desert because you mentioned it, but it is so
Hmm.
true.
Right.
And then that kind of leads into the fact, had you heard of cable, and did cable even reach pre-MTV? Was cable in your town?
Uh, the way I remember it is we started seeing ads. The cable was not around. We got cable at the same time we got MTV,
Okay.
or slightly before because I was able to watch the launch. So I just remember we started seeing ads on the local access channel and on in newspapers that hey, cable's coming. It was Warner Cable. Here are the channels you're going to be able to get. And I remember my parents talking about it because they were also bored with whatever the options were. It was pre VCRs. So,
Mhm.
yeah. And so I just remember them talking about it. And I know they signed up as soon as it was available. Yeah. Hmm.
Do you remember, I know this was a long time ago, but do you remember how early prior to August 1st it would have been, like
I
summertime,
don't.
spring?
I'm pretty sure it was the same year.
Sure.
But I couldn't tell you when, if it was, January or in the spring, I'm not sure. But
Yeah,
in my memory, it kind of happened all at one time. We signed up for cable, we got MTV, the movie channel, and the USA Network kind of are the ones we, watched the most of when we first got cable. So
sure.
in my mind, it kind of happened all at the same time, or pretty close to.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense because MTV was still really struggling with the launch and preparing for the launch in 81. So things were running behind. And one of the executives said, we have to get this to launch on August 1st, no exceptions, because we need young people to see this before they go back to school. So, so
Nice.
it is probably right that it was probably later in 81 than you would think for an advertising campaign. But
Hmm.
it wasn't January. It had to have been a couple of months,
Hmm.
close to the launch.
Right.
But
Hmm.
so when you heard, I know you said you're 10 years old. I mean, as a young person who likes music and has already been exposed to music, what was it like seeing this ad for a music television channel? Like, if you can remember, what were you excited? Were you kind of confused as to what it was? Like, what were the feelings behind it?
Um, I think I probably thought of it as just like the next evolution of radio. Like I probably, because I had, like I said, I had seen maybe in my mind it was going to be 24 hours of Soul Train and Solid Gold and like maybe in my head I thought it would be performance videos for the most part.
Got it.
Just bands playing for 24 hours, and but we get to see them. That's probably as far as I remember, that was kind of what was in my mind.
Sure. And
Mhm.
I mean, not to put words in your mouth, but that had to have been exciting as a young person because it was something different, I would think,
Mhm.
right? Especially as a music fan,
Yeah, right, absolutely. And a lot of curiosity about what these bands look like and stuff.
right?
Like Tom Petty. I loved Tom Petty when I would hear him on rock and roll radio. I had no idea what he looked like, and I mean Billy Squires and I'm trying to think of like the people who's really stuck out to me in the late 70s around 1980 kind of rock. Radio, Eddie Money, REO Speedwagon, like I had no idea what these people looked like unless they had been on one of those weekly music shows.
Well, yeah, that's such a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. You're actually the first person that I've interviewed to really bring that up as far as the image and not knowing what people look like and how there was such a
Yeah.
dearth of this availability. I mean, their pictures would not be in newspapers or I mean, maybe magazines, but unless
Yeah.
you
I mean,
bought,
you could get, yeah, in the nearest
yeah,
city, you could totally get music magazines, but that is definitely not the kind of thing. I didn't have that kind of spending money when I
sure,
was
of course.
10, and my parents didn't really buy that kind of stuff either. So yeah, music magazines would be about the only um, place you'd see pictures of those guys unless they were on TV.
Or if you bought the record or
Yeah,
or
that's
anything.
true. They run album covers and stuff, but yeah, there again, I wasn't buying music yet. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Oh, so you're you're in that weird little window of age and experience where unfortunately you didn't know
right.
what anybody looked like. And there wasn't really a top of the pops where you had all of these artists coming and doing weekly shows where you go, oh, okay, this is how they look like, unless it was again Solid Gold, American Bandstand, Soul Train, things like that. But yeah,
Right.
that's an
Yeah.
interesting thing that you bring up. So um yeah, so going back to the promotional times, the advertisements, you said that they were in the newspaper,
Mhm.
but also, do you remember any commercials on TV, on network TV, advertising either cable or MTV coming to your town?
Mhm. Um, I don't remember anything specific. I don't remember what I remember is them the emphasis was on you're going to be able to get so many channels
Hmm.
and it was going to be 24-hour programming. That was really the emphasis. So MTV didn't stand out to me separately, but it was one among the channels we were going to be able to be getting. Um, but it was just very much the idea of the variety and choice and having 24-hour programming.
So one of the reasons why I asked that is people on social media, on Reddit, and I spend a lot of time reading and watching videos, and there is actually a on YouTube. It's really cool. I'll actually send it to you. Is somebody posted an old MTV is coming to your town video. And it's a
Okay.
commercial and it's only about maybe 30 seconds and it says
Mhm.
MTV coming to your local super cable. And I'm like, oh,
Oh,
I didn't even know
wow.
super cable, quote unquote, was a
No,
thing, you know. But another
that's
thing
great.
that I picked up on what you said is that they were telling you that MTV was coming to your or cable was coming to you and MTV was a part of that option
Mhm.
along with Showtime and
Mhm.
or I should say, sorry, the movie channel, right?
The movie channel, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
the movie channel. Now, some people online say that cable came to their town, but MTV wasn't free and it was an add-on that you had to pay for. So this is such an interesting thing. You were fortunate that you got it for, well, I mean, it wasn't free because I'm sure you had to
Right, but it
pay for
was
the cable,
definitely part of the package.
but it was
Yeah.
part of the
Hmm.
package. And
Hmm.
it's funny to me to think that, oh, you have to not only pay for cable, but like some people were talking online about how their parents would get cable, but then they didn't want to pay for MTV. So they had to beg their parents to pay the extra money. So you were
Oh,
lucky,
wow.
right? You were
Yeah,
lucky
I
that
guess
that
I
was
really
part of the
was.
package. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great. That's
nice.
great.
Yeah.
So were your parents excited for, I know you said that they were excited to have more channels,
Mhm.
but were they excited for the movie channel or any of the other, channels? I mean, I'm sure they might not have been super excited for MTV, but or
Right.
thought nothing of it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think they probably thought about it too much, but I think what they were most excited about was like watching old B movies, old and syndicated shows like Star Trek and some of the old TV shows that they loved as teenagers themselves. And those like old school B horror science fiction kind of movies. That's the kind of stuff they liked. And then also like oh my gosh, we're going to be able to watch Star Wars, home.
Oh, right.
You
Right.
know, like some of those blockbusters, right? Being able to watch those at home. I think that was the stuff that we talked about at the dinner table that they were looking forward
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. That's very cool. Yeah. Um, all right. We're going to take it to launch day. We're going to take it to August 1st, 1981.
Mhm.
Do you remember anything about that day? I'm just curious, other than the launch. Was it something that were you excited during the day? Was it just another day? Like, take me to that day if you can remember.
Mhm. Um, I can't remember too many specifics. I mostly just remember asking permission if I could watch it. So I was not allowed to stay down in the main living room and like watch it on our color TV, but I had a small, I mean, I think it was 10 inches maybe, black and white TV in my bedroom, which was so extravagant. My parents actually didn't want me to have one, but my grandparents got it for me.
Uh,
And so they were like, yeah. So I was like, can I please stay up and just watch? I'll just watch the first video.
right.
And they're like, okay, okay. So, and of course, so I stayed up uh, to watch the launch and, it was at the end of my bed. And yeah, it was very cool when the launch happened. I don't know if you want me to get right into that, jump right
Sure.
into the
Yeah.
launch
Let's
itself.
let's go there.
So yeah, so all my lights were turned off, so my whole world was that black and white screen. And yeah, just the riff, bump, bana, bana,
Hmm.
and uh the animated, the whole rocket and the flag being animated was cool. Um, and then the first few videos, so probably the first 3 hours, I probably watched about 3 hours, and I probably was pretty sleepy at that point. Um, was I don't have a bunch of like single impressions from it, but I remember being really struck. And of course, it was in black and white, so I didn't get the full glory of all the color and stuff till the next day. But just all the different images and styles of videos and stuff is the impression I have from that night. And then just the idea of VJs, what's a VJ? Like they were much cooler than like I always found radio DJs just super annoying, right? It was mostly old, loud guys, right? And so, the VJs were very cool. So those are the impressions I really remember from those first few hours. Yeah.
Sure. Wow. So, did your parents know that you stayed up as late as you did to watch the videos?
Probably did. I was a pretty good kid. They were happy to let me get away with it, probably.
No, that's awesome. That was like a special thing. And I'm laughing to
Right, right.
myself about the about your grandparents getting you the TV. It's like,
Mhm.
you know, your parents were like they would have never done that for me, but of course for their granddaughter, they're gonna
Exactly.
Yes, yes. Um, so your TV, you said it was a 10-inch, roughly 10-inch black
Mhm.
and white television.
Mhm.
One thing that I can finally ask because somebody who I'm interviewing witnessed the launch and can remember, but what was the sound like? Because there's all this stuff online about how you couldn't, some people couldn't watch MTV and get sound from their TV. They had to listen to the radio station to hear the sound. So some people didn't
Oh,
get
wow.
sound. If some people
Mhm.
got sound, it was just mono, and that's why they did the whole get your MTV in stereo
Mhm.
campaign. But
Mhm.
so you had the sound and the visual coming from this 10-inch TV?
I did. I did.
Lucky
I'm
you.
sure it was a very tinny speaker, and I think it was mono
So, and
because
then you,
later on when bands did different, I couldn't hear it if they were switching sides in the music.
oh man, that would be so weird. That, yeah, because they started that whole get your MTV in stereo, ask your
Mhm.
cable company to hook up your cable in
Right.
stereo. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, but I'm assuming you also had cable in your main TV and
Right, right.
right.
And so, yeah, I'm sure the next day, Probably when mom and dad got back from work. So probably the evening of the next day, I was like, you got to see this. Like these music videos are crazy, they're so interesting. And since they knew at least some of the music, um, they watched with me, at least for that first day or 2 days after they would watch some with me because it was a novelty for them too.
Sure,
So
sure.
that was fun.
Yeah, well, we'll actually hold that thought because we'll get into those, first few days, and
Mhm.
I like to hear that your parents were also interested
Mhm.
whether it was very interested or slightly, they're still interested, so that's cool.
Right.
But
Yeah.
just going back to, you also
Mhm.
mentioned that by the next day you had color on your TV in your bedroom, right? Is
No, not in the bedroom. I
Oh,
mean
okay.
to say, the next day I could watch it on the family TV, right?
Okay.
So
Gotcha,
yeah, so
gotcha.
I got to see it. Yeah. So
I
I,
was
I
gonna say,
got to see.
what happened in those
Yeah, no,
24
no,
hours that you
no. I had that
magically
black and white TV through high school, I think.
Wow, yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, lucky you, somehow the cable person, the cable man or
No,
woman,
no, it
plugged
was
in
black and white.
color.
Yeah, and also with the mono thing, like I could always hear the sound out of the TV, but I couldn't differentiate. It was not, it was just one tinny sound. So
Right,
it was much better once we got stereo on the TV because then you could just hear the intricacies of the music better.
sure,
Um,
sure.
yeah, but yeah. Mhm.
And do you remember ever having to listen to the radio as well to pick up any sound on that?
No, that's
Okay.
a new one on me. Yeah, no, we never had to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, they were selling in the early days. Well, even if you go on YouTube and you watch the first couple of hours of MTV, thankfully somebody
Mhm.
has, posted that. There's a commercial where Mark Goodman is talking about get your MTV dial sticker, and it's a sticker
Mhm.
that you were supposed to put on your radio so you knew what station you could listen to
Oh,
MTV if you
hmm.
didn't have the sound coming through, because I can't imagine
Right.
how
That's
frustrating that
cool.
would be to be waiting for
Hmm.
MTV to come on and then you can't hear
Yeah.
it, right?
Right. Right. So my dad was kind of an audiophile, and so in the family TV for the family TV, there was a jack on the TV where you could put it into he had big speakers that went, next to the turntable, right? And so he had a long jack, so he could plug those speakers into the family TV.
Oh, very cool.
So we did get good sound out, down there. That was
Well,
kind of that wasn't an everyday thing. That was like if there was something really good on.
well, and that would have, I mean, having the sound not only just for MTV, but for the movie channel and getting that,
Hmm.
better
Exactly.
experience. And yeah.
Right, right,
So
exactly.
I know, still as far as, midnight, those first couple of hours that you were awake and watching it and listening. Um, are there any videos that stand, I mean, obviously the Buggles video Killed the Radio Star would stand out.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
were there any other videos that are current imprinted in your mind from that night, or is it mostly the Buggles or
Yeah, I gotta say from that, I really been racking my brain. I did go back and watch a little bit of like this was the first day of MTV, just like a quick, not even playing all of each song, but just like to just to jog my memory a little bit. But I gotta say from that first night, I don't remember a ton. It really was much more about the impressions.
sure? Well, yeah, because take me through that a little bit. I mean, what was it like being, you said you grew up in this cultural desert. You're hearing
Mhm.
the
Right.
same music, from the same
Hmm.
stations, and now you're
Yeah.
seeing and hearing the
Right.
Buggles. I mean, what was that
Yeah.
like for you?
Well, that's fun. Um, I loved the tinfoil looking costumes and stuff. It that video has first the song is fun and nostalgic and poignant, um, but also it has a very homemade look about it, right? I mean, like the costumes and everything are very homemade, and the woman in the cylinder with
Yes,
tinsel in her hair, like I'd never seen anything like that before. So those are the impressions of that video. That was very fun. And I think that I'm not going to say if I can't remember if this was that night or the next day watching it in color on the family TV, but um, I remember the XTC songs, I think. Um, and I'm terrible at remembering song names, but I got you, da 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 da.
Oh, Split
Anyway,
Ends.
one
Yes, Split
oh,
Ends
it's a
is the
Split
yeah.
Ends, not
Yes.
XTC. You're right, Split Ends, yeah. That one, and just the look of them, right? Because they were almost that new romantic look. I mean, they were a little bit androgynous and just good looking, and it sounded different from other music I had heard before.
Sure.
Split Ends, maybe I don't know if they did Human League. I think Human League had at least one video
Yeah,
early,
not
if
on
it
the
wasn't
first
right
day, but
away.
early in the first few months, I
Yeah,
think they started
right.
playing "Don't You Want Me" pretty soon.
Yeah, yeah. The Cars, uh, very cool. I had never seen them before and heard of them a bit on the radio. Fleetwood Mac, they had a couple, I think, in that first, pretty early on. They had a couple, I think. Tusk was super fun. Um, and I was a band nerd already, so that was fun because there's marching
Oh
band and
yeah,
stuff.
because of the big band sound and the marching band. Yeah, yeah,
Right, right. Yeah.
and
Yeah, those are
that's
the
a funny
ones that
video too.
yeah, Jake Isles, I think one of their songs, but it's like all animated. It's like little pieces of it might be Freeze Frame by the
Yes,
Jake Isles Band.
yes. I think
Uh,
so. I think that came later in
mhm,
'81. I know
mhm, mhm.
they did the video for Love Stinks was on the first day, but
That's right.
yeah, they became obviously huge
Yeah.
video stars.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Love Stinks. Is that with the fish playing the drums? Yeah.
The guy on the pogo stick and
Right.
yeah, they used a lot of clips of that for like advertisements for MTV in the first
Mm.
few months. So yeah, they
Oh,
wanted
that's
to make it
interesting.
seem, they wanted to make MTV look as quirky and interesting
Right.
as possible. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But no, that's great for the launch. I mean, I'm very jealous that you got to spend a couple of hours staying up late, and
Hmm.
I even talking to the in our last episode with Vil, he was 6 years old and got to watch the first couple of hours of MTV in his bedroom.
Hmm.
So I'm jealous that I never had a TV in my bedroom. So how
Right.
nice that you had to have a TV and you got to watch the MTV launch. Very, very cool. Even though it was in black and
That
white,
was
but it's
very cool.
okay. It's okay.
Yeah. It
So
was still cool in black and white. Yeah.
yeah, but what was it like seeing MTV, in color by the time it's the
Hmm.
next day you're finally watching
Right.
MTV in color on a bigger screen
Hmm.
TV and that
Hmm.
must have been something.
Yeah, it was really good. And again, it was it really started a love that I still have. I still really love music videos. There's just something about it's a unique little art form, and I really just loved and especially in color, just this just this, images washing over me, uh, and the way that it paired with the music, I felt like it really enhanced the music. And especially, I feel like some bands early on got that more than others.
Of course.
I've had, yeah, I mean, like I think Fleetwood Mac has some of my favorite early videos, Gypsy, and
Oh,
I think
beautiful.
they really got how to do that. And this was later, but Hold On by Fleetwood Mac, one of my, that incorporated all these surrealist paintings into it.
And they're in the
Um,
desert. Yeah, they're in the desert
yeah,
walking
yes.
around.
So yeah, just yeah, so watching it in color was really fun because it was just you could kind of get just carried away by the images. Yeah.
Of course, of course. Yeah, the Fleetwood Mac is a very interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up because this is just a side note that Fleetwood Mac is an interesting example of a band that really grasped onto the music video medium, even though they hated it, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
And yeah, if you read a lot of
Wow.
MTV books and videos, they had a miserable time filming the videos for Gypsy and Hold Me, but
Wow.
they because in Gypsy Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks danced together, and Stevie was like,
Hmm.
oh, he was the worst dancer, and we hated each other at the time. And Russell Mulcahy, who was the director, Gypsy is one of my favorite videos of all time. I just love the way it's done,
Yeah,
and
that's fantastic.
he's a brilliant video director. And
Hmm.
he was like, I was so upset because people were saying, oh no, you can't put those two together because they slept together, last week, and they're going through a divorce, so those two can't be in the same shot. And it was just this whole thing.
Yeah,
And then
that
for
would
the
be
video
tough.
for Hold Me, it was
Hmm.
another director, Steve Barron, who's one of my another favorite director of mine, but
Hmm.
he said that everybody was miserable. They were in the desert. It was like
Hmm.
110 degrees. Everybody was
Yeah.
cranky. Stevie Nicks was wondering why she had to walk around in, platform heels in the desert. So it's it's an
Hmm.
interesting thing because it's like you can understand these bands who made it pre-MTV and they had this career
Right.
and they're like, why do
Hmm.
I have to do this? Why do I have to traipse around in heels in the desert for this thing called music videos? But
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
made such an
Yeah.
impression and it's such an important thing to so many of us, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And I
Right.
wonder as an artist, did they ever finally come around to it or
Hmm.
understand the impact that it had?
Yeah. Right.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. It was kind of a frontier kind of time. I think it was really fun that people could get. It was before the record labels, I feel like, really understood and tried to much more so control um,
the
where
image.
the theme of music videos had to fit the theme of the songs and the theme of the album, and it had to kind of fit the brand of the band. I feel like all that stuff came a few years later.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I feel like the early years there was a lot more experimentation going on. I know I'm not the only person to have said that,
Right.
but yeah, so it was a little wacky. But I also really loved it was fun watching with my parents those that grainy quality of the performance videos, the older performance videos too. And uh, like, they would play Jefferson Airplane,
Right.
and that would take my dad right back to, college days when he really loved like psychedelic rock. And so that was really nostalgic for him. Canned Heat. I mean,
Yeah. Right. Right.
just all these, very, and then there was like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of some of the more heavy metal, like, I don't know, AC/DC, Judas Priest. I feel like there was some heavy metal going because they had the performance videos to play,
Yeah.
So there was the visual styles were so varied. Um, you know, I think Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were pretty early with videos. I don't remember if they were the first day, but I think they were pretty early with a
Yeah,
couple
I think
videos.
yeah, I think in the first few months they were promoting airing Refugee, The Waiting, and
Mhm.
I forget the name of the song. I have to look it up, but they have a black
Mhm.
and white video
Mhm.
that was supposed to be very groundbreaking at the time.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
this could be wrong, but I think I remember reading that when the police did Every Breath You Take and did that like black
Mhm.
and white was kind of not I don't want to say a ripoff, but it was based sort of or like
Mhm.
almost like a copy of this Tom Petty video. And
Yeah.
I forget the name of the song, but I'll have to look that
Yeah.
up and put it in the
Yeah, I'm trying
comments.
to remember which one that would have been. I really liked You Got Lucky, which is set in a kind of dystopian thing, vibe, also in the desert,
Right.
but
Yeah.
that was fun. But yeah, what I really fell in love with was Brit pop, new wave, and again, I don't remember exactly when those started coming out, but I mean, Adam Ant, or Adam and the Ants, depending on
Mhm.
which album it was. Um, and then early on, I saw Is There Something I Should Know by Duran Duran. And because of that one video, and it absolutely was the experience of the song and the video together, because it's a cool video.
Yes.
It made me a lifelong fan. I'm still a fan of theirs. I love their uh, cryptic lyrics and high concept videos.
Oh, well, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, super fun, super fun. Um, but
Well,
yeah,
I do want to ask,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt you. I didn't mean
no,
to
go right
interrupt you,
ahead. Yeah.
but I do, I want to get into those first few years and how your music
Hmm.
taste
Hmm.
developed and whatnot. But I
Yeah.
do want to
Hmm.
just take it back to your parents for
Yeah.
a second. So you said
Oh,
that,
sure.
in those first couple of days, weeks, months of
Hmm.
81, you're watching with your
Hmm.
parents. And was this
Hmm.
something that you did regularly with your parents, or was this just kind of it's on TV, I'm watching it, and my parents join in? Like, what was,
Hmm.
because it sounds
Yeah.
like they did, from what you said, they would enjoy some of the videos, but,
Hmm. Yeah.
was that a
Uh,
regular thing for you and them?
yeah. I'd say in the first few days, um, they would watch it for maybe an hour with me. Probably before dinner. So my mom would probably be in and out making dinner or whatever.
Hmm.
And then after that, it would really be if a special video was coming out, if someone had a video premiere that I really wanted to watch, um, they would let me like take over the TV for that evening,
Ah,
or
very
that
cool.
afternoon. Yeah. And so we'd watch a little bit leading up to the video and then a bit after until they were like, yeah, we want to put on a movie or something, or we want to put
Hmm.
on something else. My dad was a big, a football game, whatever. Um, so yeah, I was really in the first few days they watched pretty much as I wanted to watch, I feel like in the evenings. But then after that it would be maybe on when there was a video coming out that I really wanted to see the premiere of.
Hmm.
But pretty soon I actually would go over to a friend's house and we would watch together at my friend's house. And then that continued. It was summertime then, so I would go to her house and watch it. And I didn't have a babysitter or anything. I was footloose and fancy free. I was Gen X, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I would go to her house and we would watch it at her house for hours. And then once school started, I would go to her house, either her house or another friend's house after school, and we would watch together till I had to go home for dinner.
Yeah, well, you actually, thank you, because that was going to be my next question was, obviously August 1st, it's summertime, school hasn't started yet. But by the time, the first question I was going to ask was, did your friends have it? And the second question I was going to ask was, as school is starting, are you talking about this with friends and other classmates? Is this something that most people have? What was that like? Because it must have been an interesting conversation piece for the beginning of that school year.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. All my friends had it. And there was the one friend whose house I went to watch it, who lived the closest to me. She went to Catholic school. So I don't know if she talked about it at school, but yeah, me and my little group of friends, uh, we talked about it, and I think one of my friends went on the Duran Duran trip with me, so I'm sure we were talking about that a lot. But yeah, if something was kind of shocking or the fashion we talked about, because that was the whole thing too. I mean, we were so, very much, it was a very jeans and t-shirts kind of place.
Hmm.
Like we didn't see and dressing up like for church. So the fashion was also just, a topic of conversation at school for sure. You know, like, could I get away with that? Or I can't believe she wore that. Or wow, he looks so good in those red leather pants, whatever,
Right. Right.
whatever.
Right. Right. Well, yeah, because I mean, that brings up another point of you're noticing these things, you're noticing these styles you've never seen before. You didn't know men or women could wear these types of things. I mean, that must
Yeah.
have been a conversation piece or very impressionable for somebody of your age.
Mhm.
And, well, I guess I can jump ahead a little and say, or ask you, did you notice in the first couple of years of MTV, did that have any impact on your small town where people started wanting to dress in different ways?
I think as I don't know that it had any. I can just talk. I can speak to the kids in my school. Like absolutely, trends changed, and I think that department stores. got in on that pretty quickly. I feel like really quickly they started offering diluted versions of what somebody might be wearing in an MTV video.
Hmm.
Um, and also just things like, you know, that we had talent shows in the fall and the spring, and people started doing recreating MTV videos, you
That's
know, or
funny.
performances in the talent shows, you know. So that in that way it changed. I don't think it had a change. I mean, man, that's a conservative part of Ohio. I don't think the dynamics in the town changed too much or anything, but for the kids, definitely.
Yeah, or maybe it came a little bit later than, I didn't
Mhm.
think the boys were going to start dressing like Duran Duran and, 81 in
Right,
Ohio,
right,
but,
exactly.
it definitely would have had some type of longer term impact
Mhm.
um, and whatnot. So, another question I like to ask about people who had very early MTV. I know you said
Mhm.
that you didn't, you weren't buying a lot of music. I mean, you were
Mhm.
young, you weren't buying a lot of your own, but did you start buying music or trying to look to buy music because of anybody that you saw on MTV or songs that you heard?
Um, so Duran Duran was really the main one. Because again, we also didn't have a ton of money when I was growing up. So they were the main group that I started buying their music right away. Um, and yeah, I really mostly accessed these guys through MTV, you
Yeah,
know. That was
as many
my
did.
access. Yeah.
Yes. Well,
Um,
we're gonna get into new wave and Duran Duran and synth pop and
right,
all of
right.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think probably Michael Jackson also. Because I liked him pre MTV. I liked him from Off the Wall days. And so I think I was also buying his stuff too.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, as a 10-year-old, unless you have an allowance or a family with a lot of money, you're not
Right.
running out
Exactly.
and buying records. But
Right.
the reason I also asked that was because I'm interested in these stories that you read and hear about people getting MTV very early on and running to the record store to try and pick up a
Uh-huh.
record by, let's say, the Buggles or
Hmm.
the Tubes or somebody who they only saw on
Hmm.
MTV, and the record store looks at them
Right.
like, who are these people? This is crazy. I
Hmm.
know that's what happened in Oklahoma because of Tulsa being a test market. So, um,
Nice.
yeah, the record stores definitely had to start changing what they
Right.
were
Yeah.
putting out on the shelves, you know?
Hmm.
Um, but so, yeah, thank you for talking about the early days and um, your experiences were amazing. I mean, and just a clarifying question. You said you were 10. What grade were you going into that school year?
I would have been going into fifth grade.
Oh,
Hmm.
going into fifth grade. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was wondering if it was fifth or sixth, then, whether
Hmm.
there was like a transition from, elementary into junior high or
Right. Hmm.
whatever, that was. But okay, fifth grade. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and to answer or to speak on something you said before, I'm Catholic school educated my entire life, and trust me, we would be talking about all the same things that you are talking about.
Right.
So,
I'm sure.
I'm sure your friend was talking about a lot of the MTV stuff if her friends,
Hmm.
had it at the Catholic school. You just have to keep it, a little more under wraps and
A little quieter. Yeah.
but
She was a rebel, so yeah, I'm sure she was.
um so the first few years, obviously, before we even get into 1983 when MTV starts changing the landscape dramatically. And you asked me
Hmm.
before, what was one of my reasons into getting into the podcast. And everything that you and I have been talking about is, I mean, to the point exactly of why I wanted to start this podcast because I wanted to hear
Hmm.
those early stories, and you've just,
Hmm.
answered so many things and that I was curious about. So it's great. So um, this is a mid episode. Thank you for
Sure.
for
Oh,
all
I'm
of that.
enjoying it. Yeah.
Yeah, all of those early days and things that I wanted to hear. So thank you for that. So all right, it's the first couple of years of MTV and it's 82, right? And things are starting to shift and people are starting bands and artists are starting to make these more colorful and storytelling videos and these videos you've never seen. And you mentioned Duran Duran, right? I mean, everybody, I feel like your age who had MTV remembers Duran Duran. They remember Hungry Like the Wolf. They remember all these brilliant concept videos.
Yeah.
But MTV was playing Duran Duran very early on. They were playing Girls on
Mhm.
Film, which was, quote
Mhm.
unquote scandalous at the time,
It
and
was, yeah.
Planet Earth, and I think there was another one
Mhm.
from their first album. But
Yeah.
you had
Is there
mentioned that,
something I should know?
yes, and so it was around that time, like 82, 83, when you
Mhm.
became a Duranie. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Planet Earth, all of the and again, it was they definitely were in that new romantic vein, very androgynous, um, just a lot of fashion, you know. And I really loved LA bands like Missing Persons. They're an LA band, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Some of them are from New York originally or Boston
Yeah,
area, but
okay.
they are in
Right,
LA, a very, very LA new wave
right.
band.
The Plimsouls, are they LA? Anyway, but just those really even like Blondie sometimes would, just they would look so amazing, and just to put so much thought into their I never thought about fashion as expression that way. Like high fashion was not accessible to me, right? But it was on MTV and just like all the different options there for men and women, was crazy. I just loved it. I think it's either Planet Earth or Girls on Film where Andy, the guitar player, his hair is just this blonde poof that's entirely covering his eyes, and then he's got this white shirt with big fluffy sleeves on, puffy sleeves and leather pants. It was just like
Yeah,
it was so fun looking. It was just so
yeah.
fun,
The
the
fashion
expressiveness of
choices
it all.
in the
Yeah, yeah,
Planet Earth
yeah.
video are a choice. They're definitely a
Yeah,
choice. But
right.
you were being exposed to you weren't only being exposed to American fashion of different
Oh,
cities. You're being exposed to British fashion, Australian, New
yeah.
Zealand. I mean, you're being
Hmm.
exposed to a worldly fashion because MTV didn't have any videos to play. So they were just grabbing
Right.
whatever. And look at
Whoever.
Adam Ant. When Adam Ant was in Adam and the Ants and the videos for
Hmm.
Stand and Deliver. I mean, who's wearing what
Hmm.
he's wearing? I mean, it's just such a
Hmm.
fascinating thing, but
Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
Duran Duran. I don't. I'm a huge Duran Duran fan. I've loved them. I love their videos. I've seen them a couple of times, and
Hmm.
I don't like when people just dismiss them as fluff because they're
Hmm.
excellent musicians, songwriters. John
Hmm.
Taylor is one of the best bassists in the 80s. I
Hmm.
mean, the talent there and the ideas that he came up with on his bass lines are incredible.
Hmm.
But so you've been a Duran Duran fan since seeing those early videos?
Yeah, absolutely. And they also the fact that they worked so much with Nile Rodgers, so he brought a lot of funk in, which some other like synth pop bands didn't necessarily have. And so yeah, but I liked Human League, Yaz. So it was really pretty much any of the like Ultravox, pretty much any of the like British new wave synth pop stuff. Roxy Music I wasn't into quite as much, but their videos were neat. It was like the Kinks. I liked the Kinks videos. They, had a lot of fun with from dancing and
Hmm.
they had some Madness. I really
Yes.
like Art House and that kind of stuff. And then they had Madness had weird ones too, and the Art of Noise. And I don't remember when there was some, more experimental stuff too. Kate Bush, I appreciated her experimental stuff, but She was never really my thing, but I did appreciate the way she experimented with stuff. The motels, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, just so
Oh,
many
yeah,
different styles, you know. And then the heavy metal stuff was fun. It had a lot of energy. It was never really my thing exactly. But oh, the Pretenders, Brass and
great
Pocket
videos.
is one of my all-time favorite videos. And
Great
I
video.
love the Chain Gang also.
Hmm. Yeah,
So, yeah.
that's the one where they're kind of like flying through midair or something. They're just randomly shots of
Yeah,
them
they're jumping on a trampoline. Yeah.
floating and jumping on it. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, motels, great videos, and then you mentioned a whole slew of British bands. Like right there, you're just
Yeah.
rattling off mostly British artists and bands, and
Yeah.
that's so,
Hmm.
I mean, that's so relevant because that's what you were exposed to. I mean, so
Right.
in
Hmm.
those first couple of years, you mentioned now being into synth pop and new wave and things like that, but
Hmm.
did you notice your musical tastes changing in any sort of way? Like, were you because obviously the radio was not playing what MTV was playing. So were
Right.
you still
Hmm.
listening to the radio? Were you now just an MTV girl? Like what was going on there in those first couple of years with
Yeah, you could say I was an MTV girl. Yeah, because since I had the TV in my room, um, I just always had it on in the background pretty much. Yeah, if I was in my room instead of the radio. But I feel like when did the radio start catching up? I mean, the radio never did play as much new wave as MTV did. But you know, a few of the bands like Duran Duran, U2, they were later, but they a little bit later, but they I feel like they broke into radio from their videos also initially. Um, yeah.
well, you're just yeah, I mean you're proof that you were in this small town that didn't have
Hmm.
exposure to the bigger radio stations that were playing,
Right.
the
Hmm.
cool stuff, quote unquote,
Yeah,
and the edgy stuff. So
absolutely
you
not.
had to rely on MTV for all of your
Hmm.
musical entertainment needs to hear
Hmm. Hmm.
diversity, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Hmm.
and you were exposed to that. So that's, being in a town of what you said, 2,000 people or
Hmm.
somewhat. So
Yeah, right.
yeah,
And it really confirmed me. I mean, it sounds like dramatic, but I was 10-year-old kids are dramatic. But I mean, it just really confirmed to me I've got to get out of this small town. It's like, man, these are the options, like I really, because it was settings too, it was all kinds of different settings and clubs and locations. And I mean, Save a Prayer to go back to Duran Duran in Sri Lanka was like, I've got to go to Sri Lanka one day, it's just,
hmm
when
hmm
I've not made it to Sri Lanka, but I've been to India a few times. But
close enough.
yeah, it really confirmed that there's a big world out there and I got to get out of here. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, right. I mean, Duran Duran is such a perfect example of worldly videos, right? I
Hmm.
mean, Sri
Hmm.
Lanka and I mean, they've been other places as well in their videos, but yeah, you're
But
seeing
yeah, a
this
lot of
other,
Caribbean stuff and yeah.
yeah, you're seeing this other world. Yeah, I think the Rio video was filmed in Antigua, I want to say, so it had
Hmm.
that Caribbean vibe. So you
Right.
didn't want to be in Ohio, you wanted to be on a boat with Simon
On a
LeBon.
yacht with
Or
five handsome English guys. What's the.
who also played great music and had great songs.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And I've seen them live a few times. The first time I saw them live, I was in my 20s, and 11-year-old me was like super happy,
sure.
you know.
Of course.
Yeah,
Well,
but
and I think,
they
yeah.
are good live too.
Well, but that's the thing is, I think, for somebody like me who's, 40 years old, who grew up when I was a teenager, you had the teeny bopper wave of Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, right? And
Mhm.
I mean, that was when I was like 13, 14. And there's so much like Backstreet Boys, for example. There's so many people who are like, oh, they're just a girl band and girls just want to scream and think of it in a Duran Duran way, and it's like, no, they're really talented and have really good music. It's not. It's unfortunately, yes, there are a lot of 12-year-old girls screaming, but that does not
Mhm.
change the fact that the music
Right.
is excellent, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, I
And yeah, since during the pandemic, I also became a fan of BTS, the
oh,
K-pop guys.
hmm
And they got a lot of the same thing because a lot of girls like them. They must not be very good because they are handsome, they must be very shallow, you know.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing all over again. But yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Very fun.
so that's good. Your musical taste was starting to change, and
Hmm.
I'm just doing the math in my head. So you were 10 when MTV
In
started.
81.
So
Hmm.
yeah, so you're starting high school in what, mid 80s roughly? Um,
Yeah, I would have been 84, 85. Yeah.
Yeah, so as the 80s, and the reason I'm asking that is because as the
Hmm.
80s were going on and MTV is
Hmm.
now this juggernaut and it's
Yeah.
completely shifted not only the music
Hmm.
industry but popular culture. Were
Hmm.
you still watching MTV as much through the
Hmm.
80s and
Hmm.
all of it? Was
Yeah.
it still such a big part of your life?
Very much so. I mean, I really, so also I have a sister who's 7 years younger than me. So she grew up watching with me a lot of the time. So her music tastes were also very influenced by that. Um, but I pretty much watched MTV every day for not all day, but for a little bit of every day until they basically stopped playing music videos.
Hmm.
And once they started doing like blocks of different kinds of music, like 120 minutes or whatever it was called, but um, I kind of fell out of that a little because what I loved was the variety, you know. So I probably watched a little bit less then, but so yeah, in junior high, I mean Prince, Michael Jackson and Prince were just like, oh my God,
Sure.
they dominated our conversations. And there were some people who were like, you can like Michael Jackson or Prince, but you can't like both in my junior high and high school. Like you're either a Prince person or a Michael Jackson person. It was so silly. But I mean, Madonna, yeah, was a huge influence on Pat Benatar. Pre-Madonna, Pat Benatar was an influence on how girls dressed and wanted to look also
Yes.
in my school. Yeah. Um,
And a very
and
badass look.
like Van Halen was really taking off, and I've Rush had cool videos too. So yeah, those are the U2 was huge by then. Yeah, yeah. So that absolutely, and by then too, like probably by 1983, there were all the teen magazines and stuff that also fed off all that. You could get those in our grocery store, by then, in our little town grocery store. And so my friends and I would buy and then swap. We'd each buy one and then swap posters and that kind of stuff.
That's
So
cool.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean that coming from, again, the small town perspective and
Mhm.
finally seeing these things in magazines. I mean, what was that
Mhm.
like as a young person to have that switch? Because that was a very dramatic, drastic switch, right? So
Absolutely.
I mean, what was that like for you as a young person and your friends?
It was so fun. It was getting together and listening to music, watching MTV, swapping posters, comparing how we decorated our rooms, or some people even used them as like book covers and things like that. So it was just a way of self-expression that was really fun. Which groups you liked, who you tried to look like. You know, somebody might have a t-shirt or a button. The buttons were really big, so you'd have buttons that would express, who you were into. And it was just a really fun way to express yourself.
Yeah, yeah. This question just popped into my head because I forgot to ask it before. I haven't asked anybody yet, and I can't believe I haven't, but I've always been interested in the people who've had MTV from the early days. Did you ever send in for one of their contests or any of their products that they had? So,
Oh,
they did contests to fly you away, and they had a thing called one
mhm.
night stand. I mean, obviously you were 10 years old, you weren't going to enter yourself
Mhm, mhm,
into
mhm.
that
Right.
overnighter, with Journey or something like that. But
Hmm. Hmm.
did you ever mail away for their products or send a self-addressed, self-stamped postcard
Self-addressed stamped
to
envelope.
MTV for your MTV sticker or anything like that? Was
Right. Oh my gosh. I bet I did, but I don't remember.
I was going to say
I
that's a
bet,
left
but
field,
yeah, but
sorry. That's a
Yeah,
left
no,
field
that's okay.
question.
If
So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if they ever had anything with Duran Duran, I'm sure I did. Or Prince or Journey. Actually, I really like Journey too. Um, but yeah, I don't remember. That's funny.
yeah. Oh, that just popped into my head. I don't know why. If maybe it
Mhm.
was the
It's a great
MTV,
question. Yeah,
the
yeah.
dial sticker that I was thinking about to, to get
Hmm.
MTV on your radio. That just popped into my head. I said, I can't believe I haven't asked anybody that yet. So,
Right. That's great. Yeah.
and were
Well, I
you?
just remember later when I was in high school, sorry, I'm going to
That's
mention
okay.
this because he might listen to this podcast, but my first boyfriend ever, so I was 16. He was into, what's the heavy metal band who has Eddie, like the
Oh,
skeleton
Iron
guy?
Maiden. Iron Maiden.
Right. He was into Iron Maiden and he wore a denim jacket with that skeleton guy spray painted on the back. And my parents were like, "What? Who is this guy?" And I was like, "I promise you, he's actually really sweet. He just really likes Iron Maiden."
Most metalheads are
That's
very, very sweet, and they're not, the terrible people that
true.
people say they are, or scary,
Absolutely. They have
Most
big
of them are very
hearts.
sweet.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And that's funny. I wonder, did he have MTV as well? Do you know if he was one of the early adopters?
He didn't have it as early as I did because I they lived he moved to my area, I think when at the beginning of high school, I think. So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not sure if he had it when he was a kid. He was in Akron, Ohio, around Cleveland. So I'm not sure if I've never asked him that. Yeah.
You're like, haha, I've had it since the beginning and you
Yeah.
didn't. No,
Sorry. Yeah.
the reason I asked though is because I think it's very funny. It's funny you brought up Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden had two videos that were on MTV's first day, and
Hmm.
I think that they were. I think one of them was back to back with the most ridiculous genre shifting thing you could ever imagine. Like, I think it would be like they play an Iron Maiden video, and then it was like, Michael Johnson, Bluer Than Blue, Sadder Than Sad. It's just a complete shift of what in the world am I
Right.
watching? Where,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
I just think that's very funny, again, from those early days of MTV, like you said,
Hmm.
where there's just this
Hmm.
or even I've mentioned it in other episodes before where you're watching this performance video, it's very cheesy, it's very low budget, and then Duran Duran comes on with
Hmm. Right.
Girls on Film, or
Hmm.
something that's a concept video, or Vienna by Ultravox, which is
Hmm.
this glamorous over the top video.
Hmm.
And then you have to go back to REO Speedwagon, and it's like, well, they're
Right.
both great bands, both great songs, but
Hmm.
again, I've mentioned in other episodes, why would you want to watch a band stand there and perform
Hmm.
when you've
Hmm.
got other options? So you could do a
Hmm.
whole other podcast episode about that, but
Right, right. And that's really interesting because I like both, you know? Like
which is good.
the performance videos made you feel like you were there in the audience, and you felt like you saw the real thing because also they weren't always perfect, they didn't sound perfect every time, but still very dynamic. Um, so yeah, I actually like both. I like the take me away, dreamy, high concept, or quirky and weird sledgehammer kind of stuff too, and I like the low budget performance because they're just different.
Yeah, they're different and all the
Yeah.
music is good and the music is different.
Yeah.
So, and you're
Hmm.
watching it, I mean, you
Absolutely.
can't watch all concept videos for an hour
Yeah.
and you can't watch
Right.
you can't
Yeah.
watch REO Speedwagon
Hmm.
performance videos
Right.
for hours straight.
Yeah.
So to have that
Hmm.
diversity is great. And
Hmm.
then I've talked
Yeah.
about this in other episodes too, where unfortunately, as the years went on, a lot of similarity started happening in the videos where everything was a
Mm-hmm.
concept or
Hmm.
everything had just this it had to be a certain way and you were lacking that diversity, as you said.
Hmm.
And that's again
Yeah.
another, I want to hear the
Hmm.
memories of that diversity
Hmm.
and all of that. But
Right.
so thank you again, for the 80s part. But you said, as other people have said as well, that
Hmm.
as time went on, the reality shows started coming,
Mhm.
you kind of stopped watching MTV or it wasn't
Mhm.
as important. But did
Right,
you
right.
continue watching MTV? Was it important in any way, shape, or form through the years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Before you leave the 80s, I did want to, I think I kind of said this before, but the VJs were also celebrities to us. That, we talked about the VJs as much as we talked about the musicians too, like Martha, I can't remember her last name.
Quinn.
Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, loved her. And oh my gosh, when Kurt Loder came later, but like seemed so authoritative, like he seemed like he just knew so much about so many different kinds of music and stuff. They were so cool. They were just like that was what cool was to me as a kid in Ohio in the 80s. But yeah. Yeah, as so yeah, absolutely things got more formulaic and the music changed. Like, I wasn't as crazy about the, more the late 80s kind of pop. Like Janet Jackson was really good. She came later in the 80s and, really came into her own and I really liked her stuff. Some of the Madonna stuff from then I still liked. Um, but yeah, a lot of it was just more mainstream pop and I wasn't that excited about it. And then in the early 90s, hip hop really rejuvenated
Blew
it
up.
again. I feel like, hip hop brought in a whole other wave that kind of made it interesting again for a while. But then again, then they became very formulaic too. Hip hop videos, with lots of great exceptions and stuff, but became kind of
Sure.
formulaic too. Um, and then, yeah, I am also Beavis and Butthead was fun. So like not all the shows were bad. I like some of the cartoons. So the Beavis and Butthead, oh, what was the Eon Flux?
Eon Flux.
That was
Yes.
what because this is like before Cartoon Network and Adult Swim and stuff. So that was also wild and weird kinds of animation you wouldn't see elsewhere. And then I love that Daria was a spinoff. And actually my husband and I both loved Daria and we made sure our daughter watched it too.
Dario's a fun show. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, no, once like they got into reality and even like spring break, they would do the spring break thing and the request show every day. And sometimes the musicians would go on that. And yeah, I pretty much stopped watching it. Um, yeah, and that's one reason it was so great when YouTube well, first it was great that VH1 played a lot more music for a lot longer than and then eventually they kind of stopped too, I think. So I
Hmm.
think we kind of switched over to me and my sister kind of switched over to and my friends switched to VH1 a bit, but they tended to be softer and
Yes, they were. You can actually find online some of the first videos that they played on VH1's launch day, and it is
uh-huh.
different genres and different. It's definitely softer, and it's
Hmm.
so. But they were playing videos a lot, and that was around the time, like you had mentioned before, about how the genres of music were being lumped into a show. So the 120 minutes would have been, more the alternative. Headbangers Ball was the
Hmm.
rock music, and then you
Right,
had Yo
yeah.
MTV Raps, which was the rap. And instead of just playing a variety of things, they
Hmm.
were putting them into little boxes. And I talked
Hmm.
about this with Vil in the last episode, where he noted the genres were being put into boxes and classifications instead of just being a wide array of music and
Yeah.
diversity, like you said. And
Hmm.
that
Exactly.
obviously that changed. I mean, through the 90s when I was watching
Hmm.
MTV, they just lumped everything together, which was nice. They went back to that format. But yeah, I can
Okay.
imagine for people your age who had
Hmm.
MTV from day one or early on,
Hmm.
watching that late 80s transition had to have been a little off-putting, to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Again, not to put words in your mouth, but you said, the
Hmm.
120 minutes and that whole thing was just
Hmm.
a different experience than what you were used to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just now remembering that it was actually fun staying up late and watching it in the wee hours of the morning because I feel like that is when they would bring back some of those old weird experimental videos. I feel like that was more, they were less focused on the videos that were in rotation. That was the other thing that got really annoying is whenever an artist would have a big video come out, it would be on like every at once an hour, every hour at the top of the hour. You know what I mean? It would got to be like radio that way too. And that was kind of annoying too. But still in the wee hours of the morning, it still felt like old MTV for longer.
Hmm.
But yeah, so yeah, I really stopped watching, and my friends did too. And I can't speak for my friends, but one of the things I loved about YouTube, happening um, in the early 2000s was that you could find all those great old videos again.
Well, yeah, and you said you were somebody who just loves music videos, right?
Hmm.
So that actually what I like to, close with. But before we get into that, I'm just going to take it back to what you said about the VJs. Is you're
Hmm.
the first person. I mean, obviously the VJs were important, and people have talked about
Hmm.
that they loved the VJs, but
Hmm.
you're you brought up something interesting about you said that you were talking about the VJs almost as much as the music and the videos.
Hmm.
And that is fascinating because, you said obviously that radio felt like it was just a bunch of men yapping and yapping and
Hmm.
which it always was. But here with the VJs, you had three men, two women,
Hmm.
in the bulk of the 80s. Um,
Hmm.
and I just think that's really cool that you thought that the VJs were as interesting as the music and the videos. Why do you think that is?
It was because they were like living that life, like they got to interview bands in between, the videos, and they also dressed really cool, and they were very different. Each of their personalities was very different. JJ, I'm terrible with names. Uh,
Jackson.
you know,
Hmm.
yeah, like his style was really different from Mark's style. And uh, what was the blonde woman's name?
Nina Blackwood.
Ni Yeah, Nina and Martha, totally different from each other, right? So like each one kind of had their own personality and style and way they would introduce stuff, and they just also seemed very cool. And you felt like, who knew that was a job? Just to have that kind of job where you got to meet all the bands, and just seemed like a cool job to have too.
Well, yeah, and as a kid who loved
Mhm.
music and as a kid who loved
Mhm.
music videos, I mean, if
Mhm.
I were in your shoes, I would have been, I want to be a VJ. That's something that I would want to do.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite VJ out of the five?
Yeah, I think of Martha.
Martha.
She
Martha.
seemed like the most down to earth. She seemed attainable.
And well, it's funny you mentioned the who knew that being a VJ was a job. I mean, they didn't know that being a VJ was a job. Some of them were DJs on the radio, but
Right.
this was a new thing for them. So it's like they were
Hmm.
learning all the
Yeah.
ropes the way you kids were learning the ropes
Hmm.
of figuring out what are music videos and what's MTV and a VJ
Right.
and all of that. So,
Hmm.
and I
Yeah.
highly recommend if you haven't read the book or heard of it, it's called VJ and it's VJ and then it's got like a long title after that. But it's basically
Okay.
about the birth of MTV and how it came out. And they interview a lot of artists, but they interview the VJs as well,
Oh, nice.
except
I'll have to
for
check it out.
JJ because JJ passed away. But the
Oh,
book
I
is
didn't know that.
excellent,
Oh.
so it's worth
Mhm.
to you and all the listeners if you haven't read
Right.
it. It's worth a read.
Very
Um,
fun.
but so I always like to, as we get towards the end of the episode, I always, since you're such a big video person, I always like to ask, what are some of your favorite music videos of all time? And it can be
Mhm.
any year, any decade, whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
And do you have any?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I'm gonna kick myself because I'll forget, right? I'll think of three tomorrow that I didn't remember, but um, I've mentioned a couple already. I really love Gypsy. I really love Hold On. Um, Only the Lonely by the Motels. Um, Most In Excess videos. I love them. Especially I think One Thing.
Yes.
But I love all their videos. Yeah. Um,
Can I interrupt you for just 1 second?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned the one thing. A fun
Uh-huh.
fact that I learned that was the first In Excess video that showed on MTV in very early '83, and that's how everybody came to know In Excess, even though they had had a
Hmm.
couple albums. But an
Hmm.
interesting thing about In Excess and that video is they purposely MTV purposely played that video as a test to see if it could prove what they thought was true, that by playing a video of an unknown band could launch this band into superstardom or this artist into superstardom, and the band could be from another country. Or so that video was specifically a test on MTV's part, and thankfully it is,
Nice.
because they're one of my favorite bands. And you said that you love their videos
Awesome.
and you love their music, and I just can't
Hmm.
imagine a musical world without In Excess, right?
It's so true.
So you
Yeah.
can thank
Hmm.
MTV for that, but that was the first video
Hmm.
that they played of In Excess, and they
Yeah.
just went on to
Hmm.
superstardom. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
fun little tidbit
Cool.
about that video and about In Excess. But
Nice.
go on with your video.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's great. Well, I mentioned I was a band geek, and every summer we would all ride on buses to go somewhere for band camp to learn our marching routines and all that stuff.
Oh, cool.
And one summer we sang Kick, the In Excess album Kick. We sang the album front to back on the bus, both ways, on the way to band camp and on the way back from band camp. It was that much of a popular record, you know. It was so much fun.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder too if, being a band person, there are so many saxophones and trumpets and other
Yeah.
band related sounds in NXS's music, and
Mhm.
especially on that album. So I wonder
Mhm.
if being in the band that also kind of touched in your brains a little bit, like you're
Yeah.
hearing the instruments that you're familiar with,
Hmm.
and these
Right,
sounds.
right.
Yeah,
It very
but
well, yeah,
yeah.
it could be. I love that. I love that idea. I could just list off a million, but I really some of the early ones are Our House by Madness, Pressure by Billy Joel. That is a crazy video. Um, Save a Prayer. Yeah, those are probably um like the ones that I wanted my daughter to watch, you know.
Uh,
I like Mysterious Ways by YouTube.
Yes,
That's a
that's a
fun
fun
one.
one too. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you were exposing your daughter to to videos and music on YouTube, I assume, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right.
Yeah. And you are so the ones that you had in your brain, the ones that really stuck with you were the ones like, oh, you
Mhm.
have to see this. But it would be for the music, not,
Yeah.
not just the video, it's also
Both.
the
Yeah, really,
songs.
really both. Just one more I'll mention is
Of course.
Raspberry Beret by Prince. I just love that video so much. And
It's a very fun.
it always lifts my mood.
Yes. The color, the blue palette, like the light blue palette in that video, that color, it's really
Mhm.
cool. Really cool. And it's a good
Mhm.
song too, you know?
Yeah, it is. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I mean, this could be an entirely separate podcast episode about songs that had amazing videos, but the song that wasn't, that great, but you still
Mhm.
sort of liked the song because the video was cool.
Oh
And,
yeah, that's right.
you
That
run
could
into
be a
that.
whole
Yeah.
podcast. Yes.
Yes. But when you get the instance of excellent song, excellent video. It's like a
Mhm.
perfect combination, chef's kiss,
It is.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Ashley, I want to thank you so much because first of all, thank you for your time and your musical
Mhm.
knowledge and your experiences. You've, again, answered questions that I've had. You've um, shared so many things that I've been wanting to hear. So this has just been great. And I love that you're still watching music videos and still
Mhm.
doing YouTube. And I love that you're a Duranie, and I love the all of and
Absolutely.
an NXS person. But
Yeah.
yes, but thank you for your time and everything. This was a great episode, and you saw the launch. How cool! You remember the launch,
Yeah.
and
It was really fun. Yeah. Thank you for taking me down memory lane. It was really fun to talk about.